Soto and Chad here with our very first video on our new channel. I'm Chad and with me is Soto.
Hello.
For our first video, we wanted to do something so the viewers could learn a few things about us. We're both avid gamers in our 40s. Well, you'll be 40 in a couple months. You're almost there. You're
Let's
almost there,
call it
bitch.
40. Yeah, no, I'm there. I'm there. It's the mileage
We're pretty
too.
much there, yes. But
hmm
so we made a list of 5 games that made us gamer we are today. So Soto, what is the first game on your list?
Okay, so the first game on my list, and I'm not even good at this game, and nor was I ever good at this game, but the first game for me that I can recall is really Street Fighter Two.
That's a good one.
And what I really loved when I was a kid was going to the arcade. And at the
Yep.
time, that's when you saw everything that had awesome graphics, right? And so that was one of the things that blew my mind from going to the arcade. It's like you would go to the arcade and you would see shit that you had no idea about, and back then, you'd see shit in the graphics in the arcade, and you're like, oh my god, I could never get this, at home experience. One of my first memories of going to the arcade, outside of fucking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like the 4 game player one and the
I
X Men
beat
one.
that at Lita Lanes in the bowling alley. I remember doing that with 3 friends. I know we're getting off course, but I don't. We popped those quarters until we beat that fucking game. So I'm with you on that Turtles foreplay.
Oh my God, my uncle, he actually worked at there used to be this arcade place called Time Out, and he was the manager of a timeout in Puerto Rico. And he basically kept giving me quarters until I beat Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I was like, wait a second, I don't have to be good. All I have to do is just keep hitting continue until I beat this game. So fast forward until I was a little older. So I'm watching Street Fighter 2 and I'm obsessed with it. And I'm coming home. I'm playing outside with my friends. I'm screaming Hadouken, Shoryuken, Tiger Uppercut,
Were you
which
doing the
was
movements with them though? Were you doing the movements?
I
Were you
was
scream?
like,
Come
no,
on,
like I was just
no.
like a stupid ass kid walking. My parents must have been like, what is wrong with my child? He's literally walking around the house and screaming, tiger uppercut like over and over again, or tiger like as Sagat would shoot that thing as well. And so when it eventually did come to consoles, and on my Super Nintendo is when I actually got, I think it was Super Street Fighter like Turbo Edition or something like that.
There was a lot of those.
And there were so many. And one of my favorite memories, my dad would come home from work, and before even Street Fighter Two, we would play. We actually played a game called um, Blades of Steel, and it was a hockey game on NES. Every night he would come home, and he'd come home at like 5, 6 o'clock at night. We'd have dinner or whatever, and my dad and I would play Blades of Steel, and we would get into fights like
The
on the ice.
fights
It
are
was
the
like
best part of that game, I swear.
that's what we would do. Like it's like, and my dad. It was like the one game that my dad and I played until Street Fighter Two. When he would come home from work, I remember I'd be playing. He'd see me playing. He'd pick up the second controller, and he was always E Honda, the sumo guy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he only had one move.
The
And it was
hands,
like this
right? The
one, the
slapping
hand
hands.
move. That's it. Yeah, that's the only move that my dad knew. And I'd be Blanca or some shit and everything like that, and I'd be electrocuting him. And I'll never forget that memory of being like just coming home every day, playing Street Fighter with my dad, playing with my friends, um, and really just enjoying it. Again, I never got good at Street Fighters. Fighting games and me, it's just never been a thing that I picked up on. I thought they were cool when I was younger. Mortal Kombat fits into this same kind of thing because Mortal Kombat had the same kind of vibe where when it came along in the arcades, you were crowded around the cabinet and watching people play it and watching for the secrets that people knew and watching for the fatalities because it was unlike anything you'd ever seen. Street Fighter 2, when I lived in California, that was, and the arcade culture that we had there, um, that was hugely influential to me as far as being like, I love gaming. I love playing video games. This is what I like to do. So that's my first foray into this list.
My first game, I go back to my Atari days. My dad had the Atari 5200 at his place. And so that
Yep.
was what I played the most. I remember playing the original Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Brothers. People don't believe that Mario Brothers was on Atari. I'm like, the original one was, when you're in the pipes and you're hitting the turtles. Me and my sisters used to team up and play that all the time. But my first game that kind of got me really hooked is a classic, and it was also in the arcades, but it was Joust. And the reason
Hmm.
why I love Joust, I perfected the game. And basically, you go to level 99. No, it becomes
Uh-huh.
level infinity. There's nothing afterwards, but it just keeps rotating, playing and playing. I never, once I got good enough at the game, I was the reason the game was over because I'm like, all right, I'm done playing this. Like, I never died after a while. I started creating things in my head, like competitions for myself, because I'm like, okay, this round I can only stay because you know how Joust those levels. I'm like, I can only stay on the bottom level till they come down. I started in the Atari phase, so it was all about the fucking points. You know,
Now, it was there. So there wasn't a kill screen with Joust. I was,
no. So if
like
what
Donkey
happened,
Kong.
if I recall, you get like 3 lives, 3, 5. I
Hmm.
really don't know. It's been so long. After a certain amount of points, you get an extra life. And every fifth level was a little bit different. You had to go collect the eggs, in a limited time before that. It's been a long time since I played Joust.
No,
But
yeah.
yeah, so you started with 3 or 5 lives. So you could. There is an end screen. The problem is, I always got the extra lives, and I just got perfect at the game where I knew where to be because it's all about patterns. That's what you hear about, like Pac-Man and this and that. I found entertainment in that game. But yeah, I got to a point where I couldn't lose. And that was it.
My God.
They're like, fuck it, you made it to 99. Just the game's over. We're just going to call it infinity. We're done, bro. But yeah, so
But
in a
yeah,
way,
I think
good.
Donkey Kong had like 256 screens or something like that, where you
Pac-Man
would,
does. Well,
or
Donkey Kong Man as well.
Pac-Man.
Pac-Man has
Okay,
and from my
that's what
understanding,
I'm
they
thinking
had like the
about.
two.
Yeah.
It was like the death screen they called it because
Yes. Yeah.
it wasn't
Yeah.
programmed after that. Joust just keeps rotating. Like it got
It
harder.
does.
So
Okay.
after level one, level two, um, so it got harder as time. But I swear, after like 50, they kind of rotated the same 5. But yeah, so Joust to me, it was the first
Yeah.
game I really remembered playing a lot. It's the first game I really got into, and hence it
Hmm.
started my whole gaming life. So what's the next one on your
Cool.
list?
So my next game is closely tied to really when I got the PS1. And prior to PS1, um, it's a strange concept. Like, I would play games, and I'd have to beat them in one sitting. I didn't, again, if you turned on a game and you wanted to play it, like for example, something like Ghouls and Ghosts, which was one of the more difficult games I ever beat, like you were sitting there all day
Yep.
and you had to beat that game. And if you lost all your lives, that was it. And Ghouls and Ghosts, you have to beat twice in order to get the real ending. So memory cards, I think, were huge, and it really changed the concept of what, how I implemented, games into my time. And the first game that really influenced that was the first Tomb Raider on PlayStation 1. Um, it fit into everything I liked, as far as action adventure games. It was awesome at the time. I thought the graphics were really cool.
No, I agree because I
Despite
remember when
how
the
it is
first came
now.
out, I was like, "Wow, look at that!" But you look at it now, you're like polygons. But still,
That was cool. Like, it had, the awesome, like, action. You could shoot, you could do backflips, things like that. There was a platforming aspect to it, and there was also puzzle solving. And it's like, it was the classic, your friend comes over for the day, and you're just kind of putting your heads together and playing Tomb Raider and going through things. I think it was also very strange that it was. I don't know why we thought this was so entertaining, but like we would get such a kick out of going to the highest places in the game and like jumping off. And for some reason, like we would just be pissing our pants, and we would get up to this top place, and we would just jump off and just hear Laura Croft like screaming all the way down, and then just just breaking on the floor and everything. That we thought that was hilarious. I don't know if there was just never anything that was like that before in a game, but we thought it was so funny. It was like, oh my god. And so I had a lot of good memories of just playing that in the living room, and again, being able to save your progress on a memory card, being able to die freely, and knowing that you wouldn't really have any consequences to it. You could just start where you saved as long as you
Yep.
saved it, and you can kind of work your way through it through trial and error. And so that was huge. That whole experience kind of really led me to the mistake of my next game, which we'll talk about after yours, in thinking of what that was going to be like. So, but Tomb Raiders, Tomb Raider's definitely a seminal moment for me.
Yeah, no, before I get into my second one, I remember playing the first Tomb Raider. I beat the
Hmm.
first two Tomb Raiders, and then the third one
Hmm.
I tried, and it was time in my life. I think I was just busy with college and stuff. I can't remember. I never
Yeah,
completed the third one. But my
it had
second
this weird
game,
like
uh,
supernatural thing to it too, right? And sorry for
it
cutting you
did.
off, but
No, no,
it
no, no.
had like you felt like ET at the end of it. It felt
You
like
felt,
it was cool.
well, I can't remember too much. I vaguely remember some angel or something. So there was a lot of supernatural shit.
Hmm.
But for me, I got to go back to my Atari 5200 days. So I'm still going old school with this. For me, Pitfall 2, and not a lot of people know,
I
but
didn't
there's
even
a
know there was a
second one.
second one.
There is a second one. It amazed me that there was an ending to this game. So it kind of like Zelda, there's two quests. Basically got to find three items. In the first quest, and then you get a magical door, and then you have the second quest, and then you save your daughter. The whole point is you're trying to save your daughter. In the Atari days, it's very rare for a game to actually have kind of
Yeah,
a story and kind of an ending. But
right.
there's a personal reason why this game is, always big on my list too. Because, like I said, Atari 5200 was on my dad's, and my dad would watch me game. And this was the one
Hmm.
he really got into watching me. He's like, "Hey, what about here? This, trying to help." Because in Pitfall 2, it had one of the most cryptic moments I think I've ever came across, and this is what kind of helped me learn a little bit about puzzling in games. So I'm in the
Fucking
second quest, and I remember this clearly. I've cleared everywhere on one side, and there you're on a ledge. You can fall in the water, but on the upper left, I see into the ledge. I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to? And I'm searching. I'm trying to find a way, and there's this bat. The bat can hit you. It flies over. It passes three times. After the third time, it turns into a balloon. I'm like, how the fuck
what?
are you? I know it's weird. And then you grab the balloon and you float
So
up, and
counterintuitive.
that's how the whole second world opened up to me. I'm like, oh my god, there's so much more to this game. I don't
Hmm.
know. And the fact that it had an ending, it blew my mind. And I think that's one of the big ones. Like, oh my god, games can have stories. Just trying to be a plumber jumping on
Yeah.
turtles, or killing ostriches or killing spaceships or
Hmm.
asteroids, trying to beat all those games. I'm like, huh. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that is a cool concept. But that's why Pitfall 2 is there. It had an ending. It was actually really good. It expanded the first one. Not a lot of people know it, and I kind of wish I can go
No.
back and replay it. But I don't think I can. I ain't gonna spend an arm and a leg on that. But yeah, to me that was one of the biggest ones, because that's when I realized, oh my god, games can have an ending. I'm like, there's more to games than just high score. So
Yeah.
that's
No.
why
But
it's there.
I think you touched on a great point though, right? It's like I was talking about with my dad and Blades of fucking Steel. It's like there was an aspect to it where you know having your parent or your dad or whatever be there and be like, yeah, like what you're doing is really cool. Um, I think that was huge. I think that it's why I still remember it. It's why I still remember like freaking my dad using the same move on E Honda because when your friends weren't around, like and they were whatever, like all you had was your parents that were there. So I think that that's a great point.
So you mentioned that Tomb Raider your memory card led into your next game. So I kind of know where this is going. Let's hear it.
Yeah, it's just one of my it's my least loved game and also influential game, but a game that still continues to haunt me. But so Tomb Raider, my mom had bought it for me. And I failed to mention that when I was talking about Tomb Raider, but my mom was like, "This game looks really cool," and I said, "Oh, okay." And I think I was going through some stuff at the time. I had just moved from California to New Hampshire, and that was like a humongous culture shock for me. We didn't even have our furniture moved in. We were all like sleeping with in our parents' room in the master bedroom, and so we didn't have much going on there. But my parents were like, "Oh, like we got a PlayStation. Let's watch this stuff." And I'd be playing Tekken, and my parents would be like, "Oh my God, these graphics are amazing. They're better than the arcade." And so yeah, it was always positively influenced. So again, to go back to Tomb Raider, they were like, "Okay, so what's the next mountain you're going to climb?" And so, I took a look at some covers and stuff, and I said, oh, this cover looks like it's very Tomb Raider.
Yep.
Okay, like I'm probably jumping around, like I've got a gun, like it's probably puzzles and everything like that. But you know what? It's all good. As long as I can do some backflips and shit, I'll be fine.
Well, you're right about the gun and puzzles.
Unfortunately, the next game that I played after Tomb Raider was fucking Resident Evil, the first one.
Yep.
I started playing the game and the controls, and it was just the most terrible control scheme that I've ever played in my life. Like, you had to turn your character like on a 360-degree axis and then move them forward. I think that what we call it now is like tank controls,
Tank controls,
right?
correct. Yeah.
Oh my God. And it's like, and I come to find out later that, the creator of Resident Evil, like, this is like actually a feature of the game, so that when you're shitting your pants, you make a mistake because your body doesn't know, because it's like counterintuitive, right? But like, this game was like, I immediately knew I made a mistake from the first fucking hallway that I walked down, and that fucking dog breaks through the goddamn window, and I scream. I want to say I screamed like a little kid, but I fucking was a little kid. Okay? I'm just like, what is going on? What is this game? For the first time in a video game, I felt fear. Okay? This would continue, by the way, to Resident Evil 2, which, had one of my most terrifying moments where I was like, oh yeah, let's play Resident Evil 2. Like, that's a great fucking idea. Where, like, I was walking down a hallway, and I think this fucking tyrant guy, because, like, in your mind, you're like, oh, nothing could bust through pre-rendered walls. Like, I'm safe. And all of a sudden, this motherfucker busts through the goddamn wall, and I threw my controller at the TV. And it was like, fuck this shit. So to go back to the first one, I'm like, I don't want to play this game. But, like, I just had the success of Tomb Raider, and it was like, okay, so I was on a roll. Like, I'm beating games. Like, oh my God, like, I have the ability to beat games. It's going to be fine because I can save it. Now it's like, you have to find fucking printer ribbons to fucking save your game, and you have to find the printer. Oh my God. And then on top of that, these fucking puzzles. Yeah, still pretty vivid memories of playing that game for the first time.
Well, my third one, I'm not in the PlayStation era yet, but I didn't grow up with a Nintendo. Like I said, we had the Ataris. My parents never bought the Nintendo. I had a friend's house. So that's the reason none of the Nintendo games are really ever going to be on my list for most influential games. Some of them I've gone back and played. Like, I love Zelda. I love Mario 3. Like, those Metroid, But I didn't play them, when I was a kid growing up. I played them later on. So anyhow, I remember for my birthday, it was a big deal, I think I was 13, 14, whatever, around that. My mom bought me a Genesis, came with Sonic, and she bought 2 games. She bought the Cap Attack, which is fucking amazing, but she also bought me Echo the Dolphin. Now, my mom probably bought this game because she loves dolphins, dolphins and unicorns, and she has a dolphin. And so she saw it, she's like, oh, a dolphin game. I wasn't with her, but I could just see her like, and so, I'm playing, play the games, and I was still living in New Hampshire, and I tried Echo the Dolphin first, and it is, you would not be able to survive this game. It is a big puzzler. It gives you anxiety because you got to have air. But anyhow, I couldn't do it. So, and luckily it's a password system, so you don't have to do it in one sitting. I was 15 when I moved from New Hampshire, and we moved to Minnesota. And that was kind of like, you, a little bit of shock. I had no friends, all my friends, my life is back out here. I'm like, all right, let's just going through games. And, I look at Echo the Dolphin again. I'm like, all right, we're going to give you a new shot. So I remembered giving it time, learning everything, because you have to like get touch a crystal glyph to open another one. I'm not going to get into the whole mechanics. People that played it know it. And I got past the part that I was stuck, finally beating the game. It took forever. The second last level, it's called Welcome to the Machine. It's like an auto scroller, and you have to remember where to go because it's like a maze, and you go the wrong. The screen kills you. You're like, how the fuck? So it's one of those. So luckily, with the past, you get to start from the beginning. You just learn, and then the end boss, the fucking Echo of the Dolphin, was the first time I was scared and it was just the music to it, and To me, it was the hardest. It might still be the hardest game I've ever been in, but that I was like, oh my god, I completed this because I literally put it down the first time, and I'm like, this is just too hard for me.
Hmm.
You know, when you're a kid, you just want to fucking play. You just want to pick up your
Yeah.
controller and play. But this is the first
Hmm.
game, like, oh, there's puzzles. You know, it really started making you think, and the frustration. But it's also like, I fucking did it, and not a lot of people,
Hmm.
you know, because again, it looks like a cute dolphin. People think this is a kid's game. This is not a fucking kid's game. This was so
I've
hard,
heard.
and it was good. It was a good story. That alien still scares the shit. You know, just the again. I think it was just the screams and the noises. I'm like, oh my god, because you had to take out the eyes and you had to take out the jaw. But all this time, it sucks you in. And you're trying to dash away, but if it gets you in the mouth, it eats you, and that's some scary shit. Even at
Oh my
15, you're like, oh
god.
fucking seriously. If you,
I
yeah,
mean, if you're
never
a
play it.
parent, you're just thinking to yourself, like you said with your mom, it's like you're just thinking that this is a harmless game.
It's a dolphin, and it's got 5 stars on its head, and oh, it looks so cute. It's smiling, and you're like, no, man, you're dodging. You don't want the octopus to grab you because then you can't escape. You got no air. It's just kind of like you're basically on the underwater level most of the time, so you always have to find air. All right, so
FML.
going back to you survived the crazy horrors of Resident Evil 1. It put you in a panic attack, blah blah blah. What was
All the
the next
time,
one to
yeah.
maybe hopefully calm you down?
Well, the next one is it's like now that I'm like doing this list, it's like these are my most hated memories, but also the best memories.
I can
It's
understand that.
weird because my next game is also a genre that I absolutely cannot stand, and that's the stealth genre. So like, as you know, I don't do well in puzzles. I don't do well in horror. I don't do well in stealth. And so, but this next game, I actually do like. As Resident Evil, it is what it is. But my next game is Metal Gear Solid, and that's the one that came out on original PlayStation, not the one that was like old school NES. But I had never done stealth games before Metal Gear Solid. I didn't really have a concept of it or anything like that. Um, even Resident Evil, I kind of went into it like I had to kill every single zombie. Now it's like I've seen videos of people just run around them.
Yeah.
But I had seen videos for Metal Gear Solid, trailers and things like that. Tactical espionage, I think, is what it was advertised as, and I was like, oh my god, this is really intimidating. This is really intimidating. But I was like, I got to try it because it looks so cool. And even though it was stealth and it was fine, I've had harder stealth games, Horizon Zero Dawn being one of them, and a few others since then. Um, the stealth aspect was one part of it, but it wasn't all of it. There was also this really great sort of storyline that was like science fiction-y mixed with real world stuff that was really awesome. And this is a game that I would play with my friend at the time, and we would come over and I remember it was one of the first games that like I had never seen this mechanic, be employed in a game. And we're playing the game and everything's going fine. It has bosses, and each boss has its own thing. But there was a boss, I believe called Psycho Mantis, and this is PlayStation One, so you are connected. It had like it wasn't wireless yet, right? You had to plug in your controller.
Yeah, I believe so.
And
Correct.
so we're fighting this guy, and I'm saying we because me and my best friend sitting next to each other, and he's reading all of our moves, right? And we're running around, and just can't figure out what the fuck is going on. And so you could always like tune into like your comm, and you had like these support characters and shit that like would tell you and give you hints on stuff if you were struggling. Because I mean, I at one point I was just running around. That's like my default of being like, I don't know what's going on, so I'm going to run around
Until something happens.
until I figure it out. Right? I'm just gonna run in circles like a crazy person. Come to fucking find out, this guy was reading all of my moves because I had the controller plugged in to player one slot. And so I had to unplug my controller in player one and put it into player two so that this boss couldn't read my mind. And Hideo Kojima is obviously, I think he's a genius, but that game in total was just unlike anything I'd ever played. It taught me everything about stealth and being stealth. I still struggle with stealth. I consider myself better at stealth, really, I think, because of Horizon Zero Dawn, if I'm being quite honest, because you can't play Horizon Zero Dawn guns blazing. I mean, you are literally fighting robot dinosaurs who, if they see you, like, you can't get into melee with them. That game was the shit.
My next game, I think I talked about it with Echo the Dolphin. I moved from New Hampshire to Minnesota, 15, and
Mm-hmm.
as I turned 16, started working. And, that you meet a lot of your friends through work. This is where you meet the bulk of your friends just because, I don't know, you hate work, whatever.
Work or school, that's pretty much it, man.
Pretty much. And so I met a few friends there. We all loved gaming. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously I had the Genesis, but I eventually, once I started working, I bought the Sega CD. I had all the attachments, and I loved the Sega CD. But one of my friends said, "Hey, have you ever tried a role-playing game?" And I said, "What?" And
Uh-oh.
his role-playing game, and I'm like, "You mean like that dungeon?" And
Uh-oh.
now I
Gateway drugs.
it pretty much was. And I'm like, "You mean like that Dungeons and Dragons shit?" Like, I never got into role-playing. As a kid, I never really fully understand it.
Neither did
Growing up
I.
in Nashua, there was a place in Greeley Park. People did LARPing before LARPing was huge. And I'll be
Yeah,
honest, as a
yeah,
kid, I
I
kind of made
remember
fun of them,
that.
but I'm like, you know
Me
what,
too.
whatever. Sidetrack. So role playing games, I never understood at that time. I never played any of them. I'm like, really? And he's like, you gotta try this game. And it's the first one I've ever played, Lunar Silver Star. And I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot because he's like, if you don't
Mm-hmm.
like it, you don't like it. And I was just so immersed into this whole story that, sometimes I forget to do the grind. And the grinding is very important, as you know, in role playing games, but I didn't understand that. So I get to the end boss and my Sega CD freezes. Like it's literally right before it. It's this hallway, and I don't know if you ever played the game. And I learned you have to play your heart because you're the girl that you're trying to save. You're trying to bring her back so you can get closer. If you don't play the harp, you actually
Yeah.
die. Come to find out, some of the Sega CD models, this game just froze there. So I had and I don't remember if it was a memory card. So I took it to my friend's house because he actually beat it, and I just played out the ending. I'm like, I just need to see the end. I'm there, and I did the harp thing. I got to the end boss, defeated the end boss, saved the day. Doing that experience, I'm like, it got me into role playing games, and obviously, me, I am an RPG gamer, and that was the very first game that got me into it. I would love to go back and play now that I've played more role playing games. Now I'm just more understanding. Like, I would just love to experience that again. It's been so long because I think, God, I feel like I was 16, 17, around that. So it's been a lot of,
Yeah.
25, 26 years since I played that game. And it is, like you said, the gateway drug. It's what got me into role playing games. And if it wasn't for that, who knows what kind of gamer I would have been today. So yeah, Lunar Silver Star
Yeah.
is definitely one of the games that, if not, got me into role playing. So what's your last one on your list?
Jeez. God. As we're talking, it's like, all these other games. It's like I already had like a list of like 20 something games that have like made me who I am. It's like so hard to like whittle it down to the most influential. It's like I feel like we could talk about so many games. But I think that we're both doing the same thing. We're anchoring these games to kind of key moments and where we were like in life, and then how those
Yeah,
games kind of frame that. But I can't. I have to include Grand Theft Auto 3 and just the general Grand Theft Auto series, but Grand Theft Auto 3 first and foremost because Grand Theft Auto at the time was something that you really like never got to see. It was wild to me that like you could literally walk out in the street with your shotgun and start shooting people. Now this is gonna people are gonna now be like, this guy's fucked up. But there was some sort of hilarity involved. This is not making me sound any better,
it's
but
okay.
there was hilarity involved where like if you chucked a grenade into a bunch of people that were just walking around minding their business and you blew them up and then people started running and screaming for their lives, that was fucking hilarious. I didn't have to solve puzzles. I didn't have to do anything. I could literally turn this game on and I could just do whatever I wanted in an open world scenario. I wanted to hijack a car, run it into a group of people. I could do that. If I wanted to go in a helicopter and crash it somewhere or do crazy shit, I could do that. It was ultimate freedom. I think if I had to guess, is probably the first like open world game that I ever played. Even now I'm kind of whatever about Grand Theft Auto, to be quite honest. Um, I played the last one. I think it was Grand Theft Auto 5. I mean,
Yep.
and it was okay. Like there was things to do and all that stuff, but I think that as far as the open world and how it influenced me and everything like that, I can't not say that Grand Theft Auto was influential because it was. It was huge in that moment.
For me, it's tough thinking of the last game because, I remember kind of getting into online gaming. I came up with one. Now, the PS2 era, probably one of the most, I don't know, compared to like PS4 or 5, but it was the most
Mhm.
sold system. Because I
Yeah.
just became a father, I didn't play a lot of games on that. I
Hmm.
remember playing when Final Fantasy X came out. I played the Kingdom Hearts first couple. Like, I remember those, but I'm like,
Yeah.
but there was one that did come out, and I bought the remastered for when it came out on PS3. I bought the remastered when it came out on PS4. And when people start talking about is video games art, this is the first one I bring up, and it's Shadow of the Colossus. And it's
Wow.
such a simplistic game. Someone said it's just basically 16 boss fights, and that's it, because you can, explore the world. But that's
16
just the
puzzle
premise of the
boss
game.
fights.
Correct. And it's a bit simpler, and I don't mind that. But I kind of wish I can experience again for the first time, because again,
Yeah.
playing it, just seeing that first Colossus, and you're like, whoa, and then like at the end. But for me, it was the fifth one. It's the first one where one flies, and it's simple once you
Oh, I
kind of figure out.
hate that one.
Oh, I loved it. It's my favorite
Oh,
Colossus. I know there's a second one, like 11 or 12, that flies, but you have to like shoot it down. You climb on the wings. But 5, when it just flies over the water, you jump at it, grab its wing, and it's just,
yeah.
you're holding on. That was always my favorite. It still is. Like, I get to that part anytime I replay it, and I just, like a little kid at a candy, I'm like, oh, I love this part. It's my favorite part. It just, so that's the one Colossus that gives me goosebumps. Like, okay, here we are. And there was a few stupid ones. I should do a ranking video on this. 16 was so hard because you fall off that thing once and you're so fucked because you're like, all right, it's like 20 minutes to get back to the fucking top
Oh
again.
my God, because I think it's like you had to climb up his long ass arms or something, if I'm
First,
recalling it
you have to climb up
correctly.
his back. You have to get to his
Yeah.
back. Well, first, once you get there, he shoots lightning. So you're like in the
Yes,
little
I remember the lightning part. Yep.
hallways, and you had to time it because when you're up above, there's like little pillars. You hide behind them. You go pillar to pillar. So you get
Yep.
shot by what I remember this. I got shot by lightning, but it takes you a little bit to kind of get back up, and then he's shooting the next light. You're fucked. So once you get to him, there's a huge maze just to get to him. You climb up his back, stab his back. Yeah, he grabs it. You climb on his arm, then you climb up his shoulder or something. Then you go to the other, or no, you go to his other arm where you shoot his shoulder. It's hard. Like if I'm there, I can remember it. Then, long story short, you get on his back, neck, and then you climb up to his head, and it's right there. It's the one spot.
Yeah.
You fall once. Like I said, you're falling all the way down. It's a long ass climb back to the top, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
Defeating that final one, for it was almost like a near perfect game. Just a fun experience. You can just go on your horse, do tricks. Just look at the world. Now you're like, I'm just gonna check out what's over here. Um,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
simplicity to me is what was great.
Hmm.
So yeah, those are 5 games from each of us. That kind of made us in the gamer we are today. Maybe not our favorites. Maybe not. You had a couple that you kind of hated. Um,
Resident Evil really brings a lot of emotion out.
But there is one game that is missing from each of our lists that we kind of
Mm.
found out when we were talking about this, but we actually both consider it the most influential game we've ever played,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that is Final Fantasy VII. So for
Hmm.
our next episode, people, for those who stayed, thank you for listening to Get Friends, bullshit about games. But our next episode, we plan on talking about Final Fantasy VII, why it's the most influential game, probably get into the Final Fantasy series as a whole, that whole experience.
Oh my
Um,
God. Whew, this
yeah, so
is going to be quite a ride here.
it will be. But yeah, our next episode, Final Fantasy VII to both of us was the game
Yeah.
that kind of both changed us. And it's number one. So we're giving it its own episode. We're giving the series in a way its own episode. So thank you all for joining us and listening to us bullshit about all this. Soto and Chad here. Until next time, thank you for listening.
Thank you.